What's up, guys?
Poggers, Sqweebs, let's go. Easy W.
Winner's interview, easy clap. What's up, card slingers? It's Sqweeby back with another Runeterra video for you today. And if you haven't noticed, this video is going to be a little different. We are not in client, and that is because we're going to be going over my tournament win in the Runeterra Sunday Showdown $200 tournament. Out of a field of 25 really strong players, I ended up coming out in first, which was a surprise to me, probably most of all. If we look at some of the players here, there's a lot of strong players. Salty Simon, What Am I? Jason, Broken Ball. These are just some of the ones that I recognize that are, you know, top competitors. And this is also a tournament where you need to pay money to enter. That's why the entry size is so low compared to like the free tournaments. You're paying about $7 US after taxes and stuff, processing fees on the site to be able to participate. So out of those players, we ended up coming out in first. And it was quite the run. The lineup that I used consisted of Bandle Tree running YiA, 3 of Yordles in Arms. The Demacia Yordles in Arms Rally version with Tristana. And because I'm running Gnar in this Demacia version, we subbed in Jayce into what would otherwise be a Trundle Gnar Timelines deck, which 4LW popularized this season. But I had run into a player in a tournament who had subbed in Jayce because they were using Gnar in another deck. And honestly, Jayce didn't feel too bad. I think there's other spots in this list that can be teched, like 3 iterative improvement is probably a bit too heavy. You could add back in a Get Excited, even an Aftershock if you're worried about Bandle Tree. Other than that, you know, Kindly Tavern Keepers, maybe you don't need to have 2 of them. You could also run the 2-drop that creates a stance swap. There's a little bit of flexibility in this list. Add in more sentries if you want. I definitely think you need the Ice Veil Archer. But just kind of, I want to walk you guys through my process of coming up with this lineup and the strategy that we had going in, because I do think it paid off and is one of the main reasons why we were able to take down this tournament. The idea with this lineup was to target Pantheon. Like, I would say a little bit more than a soft target. We kind of really want to see Pantheon here. And we're probably banning... like, hard control decks with Deny. Like, Lee Sin is a bit unfortunate because they could have Deny for Buried in Ice. They could have Deny for Yordles in Arms. You know, they don't have a way to deal with Tree, but they're probably just banning Tree. Although we're not running Minimorph in this list, which a lot of versions are. Old versions of Tree that aren't running YiA. So we're looking to target mid-range decks and just go faster than them mostly. And then with this deck, we're looking to target mid-range decks by just Buried and Icing them, and they aren't able to react to that. So this lineup has a little bit of a tougher time into like triple control or a bunch of lifesteal, because that would mean like one of the YiA decks needs to get through, and that would mean they're probably banning this one. Although Trundle Jayce did seem to eat some bans as well. So you do have a little bit going for you in the sense of like there's some flexibility with Tree. You have Tree as the backup option to win. That hasn't changed. The only thing that has really changed is we're running a little bit more of the Fae package here. And getting those Owlcat, you know, token generation. We don't even need the Lantern. We just want to go wide. And House Spider is great for activating YiA, of course. But without Tree, you know, we could just get some surprise kills. And it also is really good into other YiA matchups where you could just kind of play yours when they play theirs and counteract it and then just like win in the late game and prevent yourself from taking chip damage. Another thing that's been cropping up in the meta is Overwhelm decks to beat these YiA decks down, because a lot of our units are very low health. Only when we play Yordles and Arms do we get a health buff. So Overwhelm makes a lot of sense. We did run into some Gnar Sejuani. Playing Wallop in this deck as a tech choice was a great decision, I think. It's saved us a lot of health in points where we're stunning things like Sejuani, like Alpha Wild Claws, into decks like FTR, you know, you're able to stop a Tryndamere. So this is great as an inclusion. I think it's really strong to be running right now. I almost wonder if we could get away with running one in this list, although we do have the 2 Gnar, so sometimes you can see one. But honestly, I wouldn't hate it as a one-of. It's just such a strong card. It could deny lifesteal. Wallop, I would think I was sleeping on it earlier. It really does a lot of work and won us at least 2 games during the tournament. So this list just feels like it can kind of do everything. I'm not fully sure what this loses to. You know, you have a lot of removal or like a lot of units to go against removal. Like against an Ezreal Draven kind of deck, you know, you're just going to keep generating tokens and then maybe find a YiA. So even if they have Scorch for your Bandle tree, you just have another win condition on the board that this deck otherwise wouldn't have. So I'm a big fan of that. Also, keeping the Sentry in this deck, it's like, what do they want to play around? A Sentry or a Wallop? It just kind of, I feel like, keeps your opponents on their toes. Although often they're not able to play around Sentry. Like sometimes they're forced to develop into it, which is good for us when we have it. This list right here, I really, really like this list as we have it. I've been teching it with Monty. And I've been talking about this a lot. I talked about it in the winner's interview of the tournament. But a problem I was having with this deck was just having too much Ionia, because the stock lists are running 3 Blastcone Seedling and 3 Fae. And I think I was often just sitting at like 3 out of 4 for the Yordles and Arms regions till like turn 6, even turn 7 in unlucky circumstances. So I don't think you need that much Ionia. Cutting down on Seedling is fine. Fae is like one of the best cards you could have. And I'll talk about my strategy of winning with these decks in a little bit. Bandle Commando, I think, is a really smart inclusion. It has the elusive keyword, and then it also is generating Owlcats, which are just so synergistic with the rest of our deck. So token generation is really, really important for this deck. That's kind of what you want to be keeping in the mulligan. Grandfather Fae, Bandle Commando. Fae Sprout isn't terrible. You can keep Lantern if you have a Fae card to follow up with it to play for free afterwards, but otherwise I'm kicking it out. And Bandle City Mayor, if you already have some good early drops, it's good to keep, but I don't like it if you don't have good early drops to play alongside it. Also, Tristana is a keep in most matchups. Especially if I already have like a couple good multi-region cards to play before Tristana. But Petricide Broadwing in this deck, it may look a little out of place at first glance just because it's not dual region, it's not a Fae. What is it doing here? And a problem that this deck has is that it's very low on interaction overall. We have Pokesticks, sure. We have a couple Buster Shots, sure. We have Sharp Sight for defensive reaction, and that's really about it, honestly. You could play Seedling with Barrier to make opponents' attacks worse, which I do, but Broadwing adds a really nice element to this list of being able to remove key units, often double trading if you just want to remove blockers, which is very important for this deck to do, remove blockers from your opponent's board. But it just kind of adds some extra tools to your toolbox for this deck. Removing Tristana in the mirror is really, really important. Often you need to hold up Buster Shot to threaten Tristana. There's a lot of Jinx Lulu and Fizz Lulu running around. You need to be able to remove Lulu as well, and they don't have protection for her, except Ari Lulu does, but those other versions don't. And Broadwing is also a Demacia card, which helps activate YiA. If you guys don't know, I actually just found this out recently. I don't know how, but if you summoned or cast cards from 4+ regions, give allies +4/+4. So Sharp Sight also works as a trigger for YiA. It is not just units. I learned that recently. Some of my fellow teammates learned that recently too. Maybe it's just because we're running it in all Bandle decks, but yeah, Sharpsight can get you out in a pinch. The other versions that are running Ranger's Resolve, kind of like the original stock version, that will also give you a trigger for Yordles and Arms, but so does Broadwing. And when you're pairing Broadwing with Yordles and Arms, like you're buffing a board with Broadwing on it, you're all of a sudden getting a 7/7 challenger, or a 4/7 challenger, but really a 7/7 challenger that can remove pretty much any unit on your opponent's board that you want to remove, which is super crucial. So I really like it as an inclusion in this list. A lot of other people aren't running it. I think it deserves a spot in the list. It's a champion, essentially, in and of itself. 2 mana is fine. Obviously, we're very high on the 2 mana cards in this list, but we're playing them, on turn 3 with a Mayor discounted. We're playing them on turn 4, 2 at a time. You could play them whenever with Lantern. So this inflated numbers, it's actually where you want to be with this sort of curve. Protoporo is also fine to run. I've tested it out, but I think you want the unit generation in a commando more than that. So what this deck does well is just going wide, continuously refilling its board with generated units, and then ultimately going for a YiA, or just getting a Tristana leveled, playing her leveled when she's a little healthier and doesn't die to 3 damage spells. 4 damage is a bit tougher for opponents to have. You could also play her with Sharpsight for extra protection, and then like giving your units impact and rallying. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this deck. And then the Trundle Jayce. This also works in our favor for targeting Pantheon, because outside of Yuumi leveling up, which you'll see right here in some recorded gameplay, I accidentally let a Yuumi level up. That's pretty much your only lose condition outside of like Pantheon high rolling spell shield. Other than that, because Pantheon is so low on units, if you're able to play a Buried in Ice on turn 6 or turn 7 and just completely obliterate your opponent's board, follow it up with an It That Stares, they don't have the unit refill to be able to redevelop from that. If they have a second Pantheon, you could play Iceveil Archer, you could play a 3 Sisters, you can generate a Harsh Winds off of Pharos. You just have so many tools in this deck to be able to deal with Pantheon. And the few units that deck runs, that this is quite a strong pick into that deck, as well as even into Yordles and Arms decks. If you're able to kind of slow down the early game, not take too much damage, we're running Tavern Keepers for that reason, and you're able to continuously hold up Buried in Ice mana, they're not going to be able to develop YiA. If they do, you entomb the whole board, you kill it with It That Stares, and then you're just, winning from there. Also, you get the Trundle for the Overwhelm. So there's a lot of ways that this is just like well positioned right now. The only thing to think about is like, would we rather have Gnar in this list, or would we rather have Gnar in this list? And I think it's really up for debate right now. I've heard a lot of people say that Gnar, just adds so much more to this Timelines deck. Overwhelm. The draw to draw into Timelines if you don't have it, giving vulnerable, like there are a bunch of good synergies with Gnar in this deck. I think for the same reason Gnar is really strong in this deck, although you could potentially go up to 3 Teemo, but it's the same thing. You may need to draw Pokey Stick for finding Yordles in Arms. It's good to remove blockers. Giving blockers vulnerable is very strong, and often because we're not on the Atrocity version, we're going to need to get that over-the-top damage. We're not always winning just with a YiA. They have enough chump blockers. It's like, how do you find that extra 5, 6, 7 points of damage? Well, Gnar can really help you get there and close out those matches. Whereas, the nice thing about having both of them in this deck, Trist and Gnar, is like, you're just presenting a lot of threats with 3 to 4 health that they have to stop. And so if they kill your Tristana, which often happens, they have to prioritize doing that. You follow it up with a Gnar or vice versa. And so there's a little bit more threat density with this 3 HP that they have to deal with, which makes it more difficult as opposed to running like 3 Teemos that are very easy to remove. Also, the champ spell is terrible. And then, you know, all they have to deal with is the Tristanas at 3 to 4 health. So I actually think there's quite a bit of merit to keeping Gnar in this deck. And Jayce was, like, surprisingly okay. Like, I'd give Jayce, like, a B out of, you know, a B in this deck. Like, he was fine. The generated Ascension's Gate was great in some spots at 1-me games. The champ spell for Jayce, very solid. You get to remove blockers, you push face damage, which, you know, you like to do a little bit. So pretty flexible champ. Also, the Challenger helps you remove threats, backline threats, you know, into darkness. You can kill a Veigar without protection, that sort of thing. So it's definitely worth more experimentation. I kind of feel like the rest of the list could use a bit more refinement. And I'm just going to kind of sit and see how this plays out in future tournament lineups, because I do think people are going to continue to bring this as they have been. So yeah, that about wraps it up for this overview. I did record some games, as you saw. I played off stream in this tournament. When I'm playing seriously, I just find that it helps me more to record my games, to be able to review them, but also just not have the pressure of not interacting with chat. And if I, you know, the stress of, oh, I made a misplay on stream. I just feel like I get to be a bit more focused when I'm recording my games and playing all in my own head without anyone watching. At least live. So I recommend you do that. If you have a video, you know, video software that allows you to record your games, you should be doing that and reviewing them if you seriously want to improve in tournament play. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you were able to take something out of this video. If you want to see more of these tournament performance sort of overviews, and like thought process behind the scenes sort of things, I would be happy to make them. I am playing in a bunch of tournaments. Usually I find them to be very fun, and we spiked this one, which is pretty cool. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. And until next time, Card Slingers, this is Sqweeby signing off. Peace out.